You're watching SuckProfessor. Hey, everybody, it's me, Hank. I'm joined by...
James.
There's James in the helmet. Welcome, everybody, to our Loki discussion.
This is my reverse Loki helmet.
James... This is James's reverse Loki. That is actually quite right on for Loki, isn't it?
Yeah.
Welcome, guys, to our Valheim-based podcast studio. You can see that we're in the middle of a construction zone, but we still took some time out of our busy day being Vikings to sit down and have a nice, friendly chat about our favorite new television series called Loki.
I know what this place is.
We protect the proper flow of time.
You picked up the Tesseract, breaking reality.
I want you to help us fix it.
Available on TBS, Superstation, or WGN in the mornings, but before the Bozo Show. Obviously, I'm joking. Those are the early days of television, the 80s. James, Loki took the world by storm. Now that Marvel is doing shows, as well as films, features, cinematics, cinemas, and all those other words, Marvel has gone back to its roots from when it made The Hulk, starring Lou Ferrigno.
A murder which David Banner can never prove he or the creature didn't commit. So he must let the world go on thinking that he too is dead, until he can find a way to control the raging spirit that dwells within him.
So now they're back to doing shows. And Loki hit Disney Plus just recently. Did you have any expectations for Loki when you heard of it coming out, or how did you hear about it? You know, just start talking.
Yeah. I was a little bit confused by it, the same way I was confused by WandaVision. I haven't seen all of WandaVision, so I'm not going to talk about it that much. But, you know, as everyone who's a fan of the MCU at all knows, Loki famously dies in the final movie in Endgame. Thanos crushes his throat, and he's gone out of the picture. They even says, no more tricks, no more resurrections. Mm-hmm. So it's an established, understood thing that Loki is no longer alive. But during the course of the film, when they travel back through time, there is that scene where Loki appears to do something outside of the realm of the normal timeline, and he steals the Tesseract and disappears. So we don't really know what becomes of the past Loki, but we know that the current Loki from our current experience is dead.
Okay. Yes. So Loki. So this show Loki resumes the timeline after Thanos is killed in his retirement hut where he's living, or no?
Yes and no. That timeline always exists. It's something that, you know, it happened as canon, but the Loki that we're following is the Loki that was imprisoned in shackles who stole the Tesseract. So this is a past Loki who has not yet experienced the events up to Endgame yet, and does not at the beginning of the series yet know that he has a moment of finality where Thanos actually kills him.
Okay, so I never would have known that. So the way well, by the way, everybody, lots of spoilers coming up. We're going to talk about the show and the various things. I don't even know where we're going with any of this. I know that James has a lot better information about it all than I do, but
not really.
No, it's true.
No, one thing that I should mention, and I like to get this kind of disclaimer out, is that the stuff we're talking about is based on what's in the television show.
Yeah.
And I am not at all attempting to speak with authority in any of this. I did not grow up with comic books. I would have if they were around me, but I didn't. I don't have a storied history with these characters from a childhood perspective. I have not spent years reading about them and understanding the different comic book nuances. I'm a fan who saw it recently, who has done a little bit of Googling and researching on things, and I'm kind of regurgitating what I've learned. So right. I am not trying to be an expert on this, so I may get a bunch of stuff wrong.
Well, for sure.
Speaking as a fan only.
Okay, no problem. And yeah, definitely not. You're not the Carl Sagan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh yeah, because I imagine it is intensely annoying for people who have grown up in that way with the characters. Suddenly hearing a bunch of armchair historians who suddenly became experts on Loki and stuff, you know, minutes after the premiere, the finale, I mean. So I just don't want anyone to think that that's what's going on here. It is not.
For sure. Putting out their bullshit on the internet like you and I are doing right now.
Well, I mean, doing it with the air of authority, which we never do.
I always do. I am the king of Loki. Okay. Fuck faces. I work for the Smithsonian Loki Research Institute. No, clearly not. But we are speaking with good faith and fun. Like, we enjoy this stuff. We're not trying to just be haters. You know, this isn't just what we're going to whine and bitch about. We're just going to talk about it and see where the conversation goes. And in trademark Hank and James style, we might have a few tangents that send us off into funny, hopefully funny and entertaining, weird little diversions. Those can also be, I know we've had some people, listeners over the years that like those and some who hate them, which is expected. All right. So this Loki, though, we tried watching WandaVision. It's like we only watch things together. I would actually give that another slap, but it just kind of, I was just like, fuck this crap. This just feels like they're doing the same old joke. But I do want to, I have heard that WandaVision takes some interesting angles that might be worth giving it another look. These lights are so strong. Hang on. But anyway, so Loki came by, and the way I understood it after the first episode, it was basically just a buddy comedy between they found a way to make Loki a cop, and now he's running around with Owen Wilson, and they're gonna have experiences in various ways, maybe like Law and Order Loki edition. You know, like each episode's gonna be Loki and Owen Wilson go out and they solve some mystery, and look, there's a timeline confusion, and there's a few other characters. But as we learned as the series went on, it took on a much grander scope than I had anticipated. I had made some mistaken assumptions after the first or second episodes. You talk now, James.
It was like timeline crashers.
What's that?
One of them, Wedding Crashers. Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn.
It's okay. Timeline crash. Actually, that's pretty good. Actually, dropping in where they're uninvited into timelines.
Yeah, the whole point though is they're trying not to do that. They're trying not to disturb anything,
right?
Because they don't want to create additional branches. So you want to give like a brief overview of what the whole season's about? Yeah.
So Loki is a narcissist, and he ends up getting arrested but recruited by the SVU. No, the TVA, the Timeline Visual
Authority. This is
Authority.
Immediately after he steals the Tesseract from the in-game movie. So this is what happens moments after that event.
All right. You said it. I don't have any idea. So then Loki becomes a cop, and then he starts dating himself, a pretty blonde version of himself, which is every narcissist's dream, is to date a version of themselves. And then they almost kiss, and then they try to escape on a big plane, but then they're forced to stay there, and there's a bunch of bureaucratic people in a big library that chase them around. And they travel through doorways that they open up just like time bandits. And by the end of it, Loki has met the one who remains, who is the... I don't have the actor's name, but the guy he's in...
Jonathan Majors.
Oh, Jonathan Majors. He's a starring role in... the Lovecraft H.G. Wells Countries, whatever. Lovecraft Country, who is a scientist who has caused all kinds of chaos and has created a defensive wall around himself made out of a ring of the various timelines, and then Loki beats him up, and then Loki becomes their god. Is that about right?
I think we saw an entirely different series.
That's what I saw. No, I don't. I know he dates his own self. He falls in love with his lady, with female Loki. But no, they have an interesting relationship. I'm trying to be insensitive to the entire thing on purpose. I hope that's clear. But go ahead. You could probably explain it. You don't have to do beat by beat, but.
Yeah, so effectively what it is Loki gets recruited. He's basically a prisoner. He's not really a cop in a sense. He's not on the same plane as the TVA employees, who appear to be these immortal guardians of time that are at the behest of what they call the Timekeepers, which are these three mythical figures that apparently created and control everything that happens within the TVA.
In this big bureaucracy that's kind of like police / just like central government that sort of runs the time systems.
Right. So they basically describe everything as events that were intended to happen, such as the Avengers going back through time to repatriate the Infinity Stones at the end of the in-game, and they describe things that should not have happened in the time zone, in the timeline, like Loki stealing the Tesseract. So there are certain trigger events that make characters become what they call variants, things that are happening outside of the predicted nature of time.
Okay.
Loki happened to be one, so what they typically do is they go into the timeline and they prune or purge or destroy or remove these flies in the ointment that cause what they call branch events from the main timeline. So they want a singular timeline, and they constantly watch it on monitors, and anytime a branch starts to form, they jump in and they prune that branch, which I assume is what the term prune means, like a bonsai tree or, botany or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Or the drink.
Right. So in this case, they choose not to automatically prune Loki because they have a vested interest in his services. They are looking for a bigger threat than simply the Loki that stole the Tesseract, because to them, the Infinity Stones and the Tesseract are small potatoes. They have them sitting in desk drawers, Infinity Stones everywhere, because magic and the influence of the Infinity Stones don't operate within their time zone. They're useless. They're just little pebbles to them. So they bring Loki in because they have another Loki variant that's running amok and killing their Minutemen, who are the people, the employees of the TVA. And they need to enlist his support to think like a Loki to help them bring this one to justice. And as the series goes along, you find out that this Loki is a female Loki, Sylvie, who you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So it's a good premise, though, is to say, well, we just created a setup where there's potentially infinite variations of Loki. They're not going to do infinite, but we can always come up with different Lokis. And then Loki, the guy from the Avengers movies at a local theater near you, goes around and is sort of the confidential informant / deputized police officer rounding them up. That could be its own series, but the show takes a more bigger structural, scopy, big, wide. That's what I really liked about it by the end of the whole thing. But you've done a great job setting up that premise. So then he's sort of committed to this project a little bit, or at least we think so, because he's not really someone you should trust.
Right. Loki is the trickster god. He stabs everybody in the back, including his father, his his brother, anyone he could conceivably meet, he will betray for his own purposes. That is inherently who Loki is, and that's who Loki seemingly always will be until you see his growth and his character arc throughout Loki the TV series, or internet streaming series, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, the interesting thing really happens towards the end, where basically Sylvie was pruned, so to speak, as a child, where she escaped. She was taken into custody of the TVA because she was making a conscious decision at a certain point in time. And I've heard other people on YouTube videos and discussion threads since, this is not my original idea, but someone postulated that when she's sitting down on the steps as a child playing with Valkyrie toys and things, that she was moving down a timeline where she was choosing to become a Valkyrie instead of becoming like the Loki that everybody knows. Okay. And her actions that would have led to the rise of a certain event that we'll discuss in a little bit would therefore never happen, or would happen, which would cause them to need to prune her because she became an anomaly on the timeline. And of course, as a child, she never understood this. All she knew is that she was having to run for her life from this omniscient, omnipotent TVA, and it basically ruined her whole existence. So she was hiding. You want to explain where she was hiding and why it worked?
Sure. Yeah, so she was hiding wherever disasters kill timelines. Is that right?
Exactly.
Like she basically cul-de-sacs or dead ends of timelines. So where they're Pompeii is the first one. They sort of that's the one they used to explain. And as everybody knows, the volcano, is it Pompeii? Yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah.
The famous well, God, who knows, Greek, somewhere along that Macedonia, Transylvania, one of those fucking places way back when. And Pompeii, if people just Google it, Pompei, I think. But the volcanoes were so sudden and so devastating that they actually have people. It's not the word sterilized. They were definitely sterilized by it. That is for sure. When you have your body turned into ash, but there were people that were petrified. But that's also not the right word. But they were caught. Their bodies were found cradling each other and in the shape, in the fetal positions in which they fell and were hiding from the pyroclastic flow of this terrible disaster. Not a very fun day, as we like to say in the not fun day industry. So anyway, so she goes to they go to this big disaster where, why does she hide in the disasters? Because no one thinks to look at the end of a timeline? Is that?
Well, what it is that she technically was removed from the timeline because she was an anomaly. She was not supposed to exist. So anywhere that she would hide would inevitably create an instantaneous branching event and would alert the TVAs to where she was going. And the branch event is basically if she goes somewhere she's not supposed to be and interacts with a person, that person's interaction with her will cause them to slightly divert, and everyone that they interact with will cause a slight diversion and so forth. It's that butterfly effect, that domino effect that causes the massive branching events. But if she goes and the only people she's interacting with are those at the end of particular timelines that will all be wiped out in one fell swoop by a cataclysm, then really those branches are irrelevant and there is no effective future branch event because they all get wiped out and nothing really matters.
Okay, that makes sense. So they end up finding her though, or whatever, or for some, whatever.
Well, Loki kind of cracks the case and figures it out, and the TVA never really considers it. And when he tells it to Mobius, who's played by Owen Wilson, he has one of his wow moments. So you do that a lot better than I do.
You do it perfect.
Oh yeah.
Just do it slower. Just do it slower.
If I could, I'd be doing that nonstop.
Wow.
Yes.
Do it slow. That's all you gotta do. There's no trick to it. Just
no. I leave the perfection to the masters of Owen Wilson.
I'm gonna elbow you in the face next time I see you, James.
Ow.
Nicely
take the
done.
W off the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait,
so,
what would Owen Wilson say if he was a cat?
Oh, there actually are cat videos where they've edited out the meows and inserted wows.
Meow.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Well, thought we were gonna have a lot of fun with that one. Instead, you gave the credit to the rest of the internet. All right, go ahead. So Loki cracks the case, and now they're moving forward, trying to sort it all out.
Right. So in basically interacting with this other Loki, who is Sylvie, Loki becomes obsessed with her because, like the giant narcissist he is, like you mentioned, he starts falling in love with himself, or the variant of himself. So rather than, upon meeting her, return to the TVA and give them the information they would need to capture her, he follows her through a portal that she opens, and they become trapped at the end of universes in these different worlds, until they almost meet their final fate after Sylvie tells Loki a very key piece of information. And what she reveals to him is that everybody at the TVA are variants. Yeah. Everybody at the TVA had a life before the TVA abducted them, wiped their memories, and put them into servitude for all eternity for them.
So now we're roughly around episode 3 or 4. We're sort of advancing the season story.
Yeah, and to kind of to accelerate things as quickly as we possibly can, they get trapped at the end of this universe. They don't have their portal device that they need in order to escape, and they're sitting there watching as planetary devastation occurs, and they're about to be wiped away by, giant meteors hurtling into the atmosphere to take them out. But they decide to hold hands right before the moment of impact, and that the act of two Lokis in a universe they don't belong in actually making physical contact creates an immense branch that the TVA immediately sees, which they've never seen before, which causes them to open portals, which the Lokis are forced to go into in order to escape. And obviously waiting for them at the other end are all the TVA guards. So they take them into custody, and both Lokis are now back in their collars in TVA, being interrogated.
Yeah, never cross the Lokis.
Yes.
Rule number 1. All right, so then they get back there, but now they start to create all kinds of dissension. Not what the hell we're about, but like they're causing upheaval in the TVA because they're convincing people that they're also variants.
Yes.
Forcing them to.
Yes.
Owen Wilson particularly doesn't take the news well. And so now they all want, nor does the guard, who's like the main kind of like captain of the people who wear military gear.
Yes, B-15.
B-15. I never would have known that. So they're all starting to go, well, what the hell is this whole TVA thing, and who are these timekeepers? And so they go ahead.
Well, B-15 has a moment where she tracks down, or she actually goes into the cell with Sylvie, and asks her to come with her. She teleports her back to the end of one universe, like where that big hurricane was going on, and she says, use your enchantment, help me to remember, because it's almost though she has remnants of memories in her head, and she knows that something's not quite right. So Sylvie helps her to see, and all she does is sheds a tear and says, "I looked so happy." Because she got a glimpse of her former life. And we know Owen Wilson must have had a former life or Mobius always talks about his connection to jet skis and how he can't quite put his finger on it, but he always has this attraction to jet skis, which is kind of funny because I think at the end of the series, we're going to get to see him on a jet ski.
Also, somebody had to break that baby's nose. No babies are born with a broken nose, unless you have a very athletic mother who is out doing a little bit reckless behaviors while pregnant.
Yes.
If you break your baby's nose, cool it. Just cool it a little bit.
Yeah, his nose comes from a splintered timeline.
Yeah, splintered cartilage.
Yes, deviated septum land, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
right.
Yeah, I would say that the only other important thing to mention before we get into the real meat of what we're going to talk about is Owen Wilson, Mobius's boss, is, I think they call her Judge at one point, and they also call her Renslayer and Ravonna.
Mm-hmm.
So her name is Ravonna Renslayer, and she serves as a judge on trials where they're trying to decide whether or not they're going to prune certain variants.
Okay.
And she seems to know more than she lets on. She's a figurehead who kind of operates things from a position of authority, and she's the one that ends up pruning Loki.
All right.
And really, we kind of have to jump forward pretty much into the prune universe to kind of make this keep going. You want to take that?
Yeah. I'm following you, man. Half the time I have no idea what the hell anybody's talking about with this shit. So yeah, I'm grateful that you're a guide here. You're like you're like Mr. Scrooge's ghost.
Okay. So really, what happens in a nutshell is Owen Wilson's character Mobius begins to trust Loki, which he's reticent to doing because his entire career at the TVA is that he's assigned to the Loki case. He's seen tons and tons of Loki variants. He knows they can't be trusted, but this particular Loki, the one that we know from the universe that we've watched over the years, is actually treating him like a friend and is kind of cracked through that shell. So Mobius now trusts Loki enough such that when Loki tells him the TVA is lying to you, he actually listens, feigns believing him, but does, in a deep down level, believe what he's being told. So he questions Renslayer about it, finds out that it's actually true, and she has to prune him as a result.
Prune Mobius.
Yes, she prunes Mobius.
Internal. So now it's like internal divisions and stuff. And,
yes.
But she doesn't know. Have we gotten to the part where they meet the timekeepers?
Oh, that was the next part.
Okay, go ahead.
So Sylvie's entire raison d'etre, to use a crappy word,
Jeez,
is
it's
her
like fucking
reason
Napoleon's
to be.
in here.
Yes. She only wants revenge because her life has been stolen from her. She hates the TVA. She wants to bring down the TVA. And how do you bring down the TVA? You kill those who created the TVA, or at least those you believe created the TVA.
Yeah.
So she wants to get in front of the timekeepers so she can take them out. So eventually she is brought before the timekeepers, Loki, Sylvie, and Renslayer, and she breaks free, throws a weapon, cuts off one of the timekeepers' heads, and finds out they are just Chuck E. Cheese animatronic robotics. They are a pseudo dictatorship of this world. They are simply robots. So now nobody knows who's actually in charge of anything. So a big fight ensues, and Loki ends up being pruned from behind by Ravonna.
Loki gets pruned, right? Okay.
So now it's just Sylvie and Ravonna in a room, and they start saying, Ravonna is saying, I can help you. I will work with you. I want to know who's in charge, too. I want answers as well. We can work together until the TVA guards bust in and Ravonna turncoats back against her, and Sylvie self-prunes.
I see.
So that's when we find out that pruning is not the end. Pruning sends you to what is called the Void, which is this pocket of existence at the end of time where all the other Loki variants who have been pruned in the past live and breathe, and that's where this weird, bizarre Thor Ragnarok style of comedy and chaos ensues, and one of the best episodes in the entire series, where you get to meet old school Loki and alligator Loki and Loki. It's just it's a lot of fun. Child Loki.
Like teen Loki. I thought they did an interesting job with that. There's a whole lot of Lokis in there, and it must be just like as you said earlier, just like the best nutrients for people who are super into this stuff. Isn't there the Thanos helicopter? Tell me.
There's all sorts of Easter eggs hidden in that episode. There's the Thanos copter from the early comics. Again, I was not a child reading these comics, but I'm aware that Thanos used to travel around in a ridiculous little yellow copter with Thanos written on the edge, because that's just so absurd in our time. In our time, Thanos travels through intergalactic space in gigantic battle cruisers that take up the entire sky.
Which is not absurd.
But, well, right, it's more fitting to a character of his gravity.
Yeah, right now.
But when you take that big hulking frame, the Mad Titan, and you shove him inside a little mini one-person yellow helicopter,
right,
he becomes a lot less intimidating at that point.
Which, when in the 40s or 50s or whenever the hell whoever thought of Thanos, those writers back then, that must have seemed like crazy technology. To have him in a helicopter. And maybe they could have an invisible plane. Wouldn't an invisible plane be like the ultimate in any kind of superhero technology that should never be made fun of?
Until you're trying to parallel park it and you start dinging other people, it's just difficult.
Why are those two cars shaking? Yes. So other Easter eggs that jumped out?
I could have sworn that I saw Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy. His ship appeared to be crashed out there, and it did seem like, and I'm going to get this one wrong because I don't recall. I don't remember what it's called, but from the Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., that giant hover, basically that aircraft carrier that hovers up in the sky that S.H.I.E.L.D. operates. Of
course.
I could have sworn I saw an engine from that kind of emerging from the ground. So I think that's there as well.
Nice.
Those are the only things I really noticed, though, was the Thanos copter, Ronan, and the Avenger ship.
I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff. So everybody let us know in the comments. Maybe a little community can help people find their own fun Easter eggs.
And there's a car with a pizza delivery thing on the top of it, which I assume is from something that Owen Wilson is driving around there. That's probably a reference that I don't get either, but it's too unique looking not to be.
Agreed. Yeah. How could the creators of the show resist the temptation to just squeeze all that sort of stuff in there, which you get to do when you have timelines intersecting with each other. One of my gripes with timeline stuff, which seems to be everywhere nowadays, is just it's all just resettable. There's no real, if someone dies, it's like, well, no, they didn't die. It's a show about with time jumps, so they could totally come back somehow. So that it is a bit too convenient. But once you introduce the premise into the premise, the notion of timelines and time resets and people who have authority over time, or at least they have the technology to operate within time's, rivulets and sinews, it's kind of inherent in it that you've removed the notion of time being a limited resource. Because philosophically, time is about the only thing that is not abundant to an animal, to a human, us. Everything else, I would argue, I'm not trying to talk about resources, but most things that seem scarce are not so scarce, like fresh water or oxygen. But we are going to run out of time.
And Nintendo Switches.
And we can poison the water or have societal controls over water that fuck it up, but it's truly not. We could easily have enough water for everybody, so not to try to get into that stuff. But why the hell am I rambling about? Oh, but just the fact that it's a timeline show or time travel show, it removes the notion that there's a consequence to anything, which kind of fucks it all up a little bit. But that's okay. They did it. They do a decent. This is inherently built into this show because it's very much about time and timelines. All right, that's my bullshit.
So basically, all the main players are in the void at this point in time.
Yeah.
And there's this gigantic cloud monster that devours all time and space up in the sky named Alioth. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I think that's how they pronounced it.
Mm-hmm.
But they figure if they're going to escape from the void, they have to kill the guard dog that's preventing them from escaping from the void, which is this Alioth creature. And all the other Lokis that have lived there for years upon years upon years have been resigned to their fate that you do not fight the creature in the sky. There is no fighting back against this creature. And as it turns out, Sylvie has an enchantment power that we've seen throughout every episode up until this point, where she was a primary character. And she thinks that she can destroy this giant behemoth in the sky using her powers. So they basically do that. They do destroy it. And when the creature dissipates, there is this gigantic mansion at the end of time that appears that was not visible by virtue of the cloud monster Alioth kind of concealing it from existence.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is apparently what they believe to be, that is where the head of the TVA is. So Sylvie and Loki approach and enter this complex.
Did we skip over the timekeepers where they find out that they're androids? Or,
No, we talked about that.
Oh, you said okay. Yeah, that was a big reveal. That was what sealed the deal for all the TVA employees to be like, "Oh, the bosses are just fucking robots." It's like working at Chuck E. Cheese's and thinking that the band is your bosses, and then some guy comes by and cuts their heads off, and they're like, "Oh,
Well-
fuck, no,
Well, only
who's
one
the real
TVA
boss?"
Only two TVA employees are aware that the timekeepers are dead, and that's B-15 and Ravonna. And Ravonna puts B-15 in prison to avoid having her spill the beans to other ones, I believe.
Okay, so she's an institutionalist. She's bought in.
Right,
All
because
right.
she knows, and there was C-20 as well, which was another guard who had her memories kind
Okay.
of revived for her, and they just pruned her because she was too much of a threat. But
All right.
that's, not too important going into that.
Okay, so back to the castle that they revealed. I did jump us back a little bit by bringing that up. But so now we're back to the castle that they revealed by beating the giant cloud guard dog. And now they can enter and look for he who remains. Or is it the one who remains or something like that?
Well, but we find out as soon as they go in, Miss Minutes appears and it calls it the Citadel at the edge of time, or the Citadel at the end of time, I think is what she said, actually.
Yeah.
And essentially says that he is impressed that you're here. And they say, well, who is he? It's he who remains, which still doesn't give us a whole lot of information whatsoever.
Yeah.
But Miss Minutes offers to put them back both onto the same timeline in a world where they can have everything they ever wanted.
Oh.
A life full of happy memories for Sylvie, and a world where Thanos is killed by Loki, and Loki fells the Avengers, and Loki takes the throne of Asgard, and has everything they ever want.
Yeah, and
But
he can show up
Sylvie,
his
right-
hunky brother, because he's not hunky
Yes.
the way the Australian god Thor is hunky.
Right.
And that's like his dream. He's always been shown up by his brother, hunky Thor.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the Lokis basically reject this theory and this offer and say no, that would be all fiction. We want
Yeah.
something of substance. We want our destiny.
And-
And Miss Minutes was like, okay, good luck with that, and poofs away.
Miss Minutes is that little cartoon clock. It has
Yes.
kind of that 50s retro, early Disney years sort of style of animation.
Yes, who turns out to know more than we thought she knew.
Right. Like it's kind of like what's the name of the servant from the Jetsons?
Oh, Rosie.
Rosie. No, but she's sort of like a closer. Like she's like Wormtongue to the guy who is the steward of Gondor, played by the guy who starred in Fringe. I'm really making a lot of sense. But as it actually turns out, though, she's also a little misguided, right? And isn't that kind of how when we finally? I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So when we finally meet he who remains, or the one who remains, that's like most of the final.
Yes.
I was actually that guy's a great actor. I thought the casting was really
Oh
good.
yeah. I did not like him in Lovecraft Country. I thought
Yeah.
he was fantastic in this one. Jonathan Majors we're talking about, who
Yeah.
emerges out of an elevator as he who remains. But before
Right.
we get to him,
Yeah.
there was a time where Miss Minutes did jump back to the TVA and had a brief interaction with Ravonna Renslayer and said, here are the files you asked for. And she looks at it and goes, these are not the files I asked for. And she said, well, he thinks these are more interesting. And Ravonna says, who is he? So it kind of tells me that Ravonna is not aware of He Who Remains and the void at the end of time. She's been kept in the dark like everyone else, and she kind of operates on a faith-based system where she doesn't quite understand why the TVA exists. And she doesn't really know how it came to be or who started it,
Right.
but she has faith that the fact that she is put into this position means that there is a good reason for it to exist. And even though she doesn't understand the reason, she believes it's a noble one.
And even, not knowing exactly the ultimate source of the power or its origins, it's a big, powerful institution that she has status and power within. So she's sort of incentivized to kind of defend it in a way. People are often less willing to look at things that might disprove the narrative or the worldview that they have in order to maintain what's probably an advantaged position over, within it. Generally, those who are comfortable and have status and authority within systems, even if they're oppressive, the people who have advantages and comfort tend to be the ones who don't want to change things too much. That's at play too, I think, a little bit.
And then that also feeds into how the rest of the TVA employees get caught on that the TVA is lying to them.
Right.
And what happens is B-15 is released from her holds, I believe, and she escapes to another timeline And I think what she does is she intentionally causes a branch to force the upper guards of the TVA to chase her there, and she hides in an office at a university in a college or something like that.
Yeah.
And it turns out to be Renslayer's office. The Renslayer who existed on her timeline before the TVA captured her and made her into who we know to be today. And the fact that the lead guard, second in command to B-15, I suppose, witnessed that himself, that was what caused the chain reaction of all the rest of the TVA to understand that they are being deceived.
Yeah. Right.
So then that brings us back to He Who Remains.
Well, it's very Wizard of Oz-ish. We're now very much behind the curtain, aren't we? When we're in his office, and they're still antagonistic to him. They think they're there to like take him down. So she does try to attack him almost right away. And he has some powers. He's very quick. He just doesn't have any risk of being hurt, and he seems completely unworried or non-worried about them at all.
Well, it's not
he's very
that he's
powerful.
Quick.
He's omniscient.
Or it's not that he's powerful so much, I wouldn't say, but he has the same technology, one of those, I forget what they're called, those little time pads that allows him to zip away at the last moment.
Right.
So and I guess you could say knowledge is power, but he's able to do it because he knows everything. He has seen everything.
It's all ahead. Yeah, he knows everything ahead of time.
Yeah. So it's not that he can't die or he can't be hurt or that he can't be hit, but he has programmed this device in order to evade any attack that is made against him because he already knows that it's coming.
He's Biff Tannen from Back to the Future 2.
Exactly.
Yeah. With the sports book.
Yes.
Okay.
So they attempt to kill him multiple times, and he starts showing them, scripts of everything that they've said, saying everything is already written, everything is already, prophesized, so to speak. And then it gets into him describing his origins. And do you want to take that one away?
Sure. I'm sure I'll explain this perfectly. I thought that was a really compelling part of the episode. So I love these big sort of lore-heavy structural kind of stuff. Like if it was just the premise where they're hunting different Lokis, that might be interesting, but it could totally get old. The final episode was like just pure manna for me, man. I was really enjoying it. So this whole sequence was really interesting. It's probably something, and I would like to watch it again. Turns out he's an Earthling, right? And he's from the 31st century, and he's a scientist who cracked open some sort of time thing with technology. I'm sure I'm missing the details. But then it turns out there's a whole bunch of variants of him, similarly, basically like evil Carl Sagans. I don't know if they're all bad or not. But because all these different variants of this brilliant scientist from the 31st century start to get this technology for manipulating these timelines, they have tensions and fights, but they end up agreeing to just all sort of, they become gods or something. Or I mean, I don't quite understand how much time goes by from when he discovered this technology to where it turned into this big bureaucracy, because they have like sort of an agreement to only have like 4 of them in charge or something like that, but then somebody fucks with it, and so then he has to regulate.
Get up.
Uh-oh.
The Horde is attacking.
Oh, we've got violence. Hold on, guys. Sorry, guys. Let me turn on. There they are. Oh, crap. I've never actually had this happen. I gotta put on my armor.
Oh, no.
This is a battle. I've never had the Fullings come at me. Get out of there.
Yeah, I've never seen this either. This may be something.
They're swimming in.
Oh, my God.
Well, let's hit them while they're still swimming. Thank God you're here. I'm going to focus on the Berserker. This is a great podcast. Boy, is this harder because you're here, James? Does it add characters?
I don't think so, no. I'm just going to let them come up here and take them out as they approach.
You're getting your ass beat.
No.
There you go.
I'm waiting to try and parry.
Oh, yeah, I always forget to do that. Oh shit! No, you're gonna bust up my stuff. Let me run away from.
Yeah, let's lure him off.
Not lure him into my travel garage. Get out of here, Fulling. That one. Power swing.
He hit me pretty hard there.
Took a shot from a weak one. All right, Berserker's left.
Oh, risk taking another hit. So I wasn't, ready to fight at all.
That's all right. That's why I built this big, or at least that's why I'm working on this huge castle. Where the hell are they?
Oh, there's another one over this way. Oh, nice
Got
shot.
him. Oh, they dropped a totem. Hell yeah. And they brought the black metal to me. Sweet. All right. Okay, so back to Loki.
Okay, yeah, let's return back from
And gather
to
up all the loot. So, all right, so this is what used to happen on all the old talk shows. Dick Cavett, Phil Donahue, Oprah in the early years before she could afford security. Nice. That was fun little diversion. Come on, James, hurry up.
That was unexpected.
Yet, I was kind of hoping something like that would happen because it gives us a nice diversion. All right, so murder break over.
Okay, so we were talking about He Who Remains and his origin stories. So I looked into this a little bit, and it's kind of interesting because
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, in the show, they describe his origins much like you said, where he was a scientist from the 31st or whatever century.
31st.
Yes, and he was living in a utopian society where, they were far in the future. People, had all the technology they could potentially want. Life was good. There was no conflict.
Right.
He decided in the comic books, he decided to research time travel and open portals so that he could travel back in time out of boredom, essentially, using his futuristic weapons to go back to ancient Egypt to install himself as a pharaoh leader and to start taking over all of time. And I think in that case, he called himself a Rama Tut.
Okay.
He has also been known as Iron Lad, Victor Timely, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus, King the Conglomerator, Mr. Griffin, and King the Conqueror.
And Wade Boggs.
Well, yes. Yeah. And the thing about him is that in the comics, it was kind of assumed that he was a descendant of Reed Richards, who everyone knows as Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four, and it was postulated that he was possibly a descendant of Doctor Doom. Because he had this, crazy amounts of analytical knowledge and engineering and scientific wherewithal to get to the point that he was at.
Okay.
In the context of the TV show, though, it seems to suggest that he was curious as a scientist, and he was simply experimenting where he discovered the way to open rifts between worlds, and he discovered universes stacked upon one another. And he started, meeting with versions of himself that were making the same discoveries at the same time, and it led to the universes cooperating with one another to enhance one another with the technology from one another. But eventually, he discovered that a lot of his variants were not as benevolent as he was.
Yeah.
They were conquerors in nature, and they started this all-out, multi-dimensional war.
So this is sort of like the Titans in a sense, right? Like the mythology that we're all kind of coming from, our origin, the placenta of the narrative mythologies here is the Avengers and Thanos, and right? And coming especially from you and I, your perspective and mine, and you definitely know more than I do, but I'm very much a layman with like the Marvel world. So there's like canonical origins that I'm missing. But from consuming the movies and the occasional show and the memes that can't get enough memes. God, I love when people explain them, but don't even bother showing them to you. That's always fun, isn't it? We don't necessarily know about all these scientists of the original timeline manipulators, some of whom are good and some of whom are bad, and who have this massive battle going. It's like very deep ancient history. Or am I misunderstanding that completely? Because it's like the Avengers, like the Thanoses and the Thors and the Odins and the Kryptonites. Those aren't even Marvel, right?
No,
the Kryptons.
Krypton would be DC.
Okay, fine. But all those guys are sort of like a subcategory of this much bigger or more ancient battle realm between all these variants of the conqueror time of the scientist known as Remy the Tut or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Or am I wrong? Please tell me either way.
No, I mean,
I don't know.
I honestly don't know. I don't know
Okay.
if the comics ever fleshed this out in more detail, or if it's simply a backstory that's described in a single panel in a single comic book from 30, 40 years ago. I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I do know one interesting thing, though, is
Right.
that in reading back about the comic books, this character, King, which we know he is King the Conqueror because in the upcoming Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania, they've already revealed that the villain there is King the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors. So we know who he is. That much
okay.
is confirmed.
Cool.
Okay, you have no pants on. Got it.
It's nighttime. Take your pants
Yes.
off.
And the interesting thing is that King the Conqueror did fall for a love interest in the comic books. And you want to take a wild guess as to who that love interest is?
All right, I'm going to guess this. Kane the Conqueror falls for Kodo the Conqueror. Kane and Kodo from Simpsons. Kodos. Simpsons, Joe. No, he falls in love with Paul Rudd because who can resist such regular guy charm? Ant-Man.
Not quite. It's a character who is known as Princess Ravonna Lexus Renslayer.
I was going to say that next.
So we know she's going to have a much, much, much larger role in this as time goes on.
Wait, is that the same one we've been talking about?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, we never knew her as Princess, but Ravonna Renslayer.
Okay. So there's some origins there. And yeah, it's like once you mess with people's brain, like meaning like they can have different origins as well in this whole timeline. It's very nice to have that literary device where you can just make anything up that you need. I don't mean that to sound so cynical, though. Actually, it works. And they did a good job with telling this story. So she's going to be a bigger character.
Oh, much so, yes. So basically, all this kind of coalesces into King. We'll just call him that, I guess, instead of He Who Remains. Because the whole concept of He Who Remains is that in order to end this multi-dimensional war, what he ended up doing was creating almost like a time loop where that giant ring of time circulating around his mansion at the end of time is essentially his construct to control the multiverse.
Right.
And he took this creature, this Alioth, and Alioth he describes as a creature that was born of the chaos of him ripping new realities and traveling through time.
Okay.
So he was able to harness the power of Alioth and use it to win the war against all the other variants of himself and to bring about peace.
Okay.
And all the times where the TVA is going in and pruning supposedly innocent people, it's done out of necessity, because anytime somebody creates an action on a timeline which goes towards steering the universe towards a point where King, or at Nathaniel Richards, I think was his original name. I think that's... I could be getting that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably completely getting that wrong.
Sinner.
But anyway... Oh, actually, no. His name was Nathaniel Richard, which is maybe that's why people think that he and Reed Richards are connected. I don't really know.
Okay,
but
you're forgiven.
Yes, but anytime the timeline starts pointing in that direction, they go in and prune it because they want to prevent the eventuality of Richards opening these portals and creating the multidimensional war in the first place.
All right.
So while it seems like an evil act to go in and to effectively murder people and wipe out entire timelines, it's done with a necessary evil purpose, if that makes any sense.
So, yes, and this leads, and forgive me if you've already mentioned it, but he makes an offer to the two Lokis, right? Did you already kind of go over that?
No, that was really the next thing we're going to go into.
Yeah, okay. So his whole thing about predicting everything and having knowledge, there's a really interesting moment. I actually like the way they did it because they let it be a little slow. I like when filmmakers make decisions that normally go against the standard, kind of like don't dare lose anybody's attention, but they push in real slow on him, and like you can hear him listening to sounds. You hear some strange, distant, sort of deep, big wavelength, deep bassy sort of distant noises that he's listening to, and you can hear you watching him watch it, and he's kind of like almost like a very strong transition from this confident, overwhelmingly powerful super being who's been, through all the rigmarole infinite amount of times or whatever the hell. And he says, like, what did he say? We crossed over, or we transitioned, or that was the transition, or we've reached something. And so
we crossed the threshold.
The threshold. And that was actually the end of his knowledge, right? Isn't that what that was? So he ran out. Like Loki, the two Lokis show up just when he's running out of his power, basically. and he kind of changes his demeanor. He doesn't become like mousy and squirrely, but he's still kind of that guy. But like, I thought that was really interesting the way they let that happen kind of slowly so that he could act. Like, I really appreciated that this guy had a lot of range in his acting and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So now he's in a position where he's no longer has the powers he's got or he's used to having. So he offers Loki's Sylvie. Is it Sylvie or Sylvia? Sylvie and Thor's brother the opportunity to take over. Right?
Yes.
What are you laughing at?
That you called him Thor's brother.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean, the series is called Loki.
it should have been called Thor's brother.
I like that.
Yeah. He's not a hunky Australian, okay? That's the only thing that matters is those hunky.
I mean, Tom Hiddleston did audition for Thor originally.
Really?
Oh yeah, the audition tape is really hard to watch. It's like this would never work.
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't have been wearing that Thor helmet or that Loki helmet like you and I are wearing. We both have reverse Loki helmets on, which is your joke. You said that the first time we tried to record this podcast when I didn't have my microphone working. All right, so
no, I think we said that this time.
Oh yeah, we probably did. Who knows? But yeah, you're okay. So now Loki's are. You actually did mention this a little briefly, but they're no. First, he tries to bribe them with their ideal life. That's what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Now he's basically saying
Miss Minutes did that.
Oh, okay. She did. Okay. Well, they turned that down, but now they're being offered with the chance to run the show here and take over for this guy's job, basically.
Right. He basically says, I've lived a million lifetimes. I'm tired. I'm older than I look. And this is a game for young people. It's not in me anymore. So he offers them two choices. You can come up and run your sword through him, kill him, which will open up. It will basically release the stopgap of control of the TVA, and all the millions of different variants of evil kings will emerge and reinvigorate the multidimensional war.
Pure chaos.
Yes.
And destruction everywhere.
Yep. Or you can simply take over and do the pruning and run things in his stead and carry on his life's work.
And you're still going to be doing evil, but you're going to be maintaining the order that is keeping the rest of it okay, which is actually
evil for a good purpose.
Or at least for what so they have to decide if they trust him though, because they don't know if he's lying about. They don't know for sure that everything's going to go to hell if they release all the timelines, and they don't know. So they have to make a difficult decision.
Right, and Loki believes him and says, if he's not lying, that's the gambit. We have to take over. We have to keep the status quo going. We have to continue his life's work. And Sylvie has a completely different mindset. Yeah,
so they don't agree, and then they have a fight. They have a pretty good Loki fight. Right there in his office, and he's probably just thinking, "Geez, this negotiation's gone weird." The two people started fighting each other.
Yep, and it's the two fatal flaws of both Loki that prevent a consensus from being reached. The Loki that we know can't be trusted because he's the god of mischief and he betrays everyone. And the Sylvie Loki that we now know can't trust someone because she's always been betrayed her entire life.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting setup. I thought that was well done. Even a simplistic one like that can still be compelling. But he's persuaded. Loki, Thomas Hiddleston, is persuaded that I keep forgetting to put the camera on me when I talk. I'm trying to produce this podcast video here, James. I know you can't see it right now, but he's persuaded, like you just said, though, that we can't take the risk that the cost of it all going to hell and chaos actually breaking out the way he says it would. We just can't risk that, because if he's right, that's just too much for everybody. So we have to go with this other decision, which is sort of like is it the prisoner's dilemma? I don't think it is, but it's sort of like a logical paradox, kind of a puzzle equation thingy where you don't really know, but you have to just make the best, estimate or guess you can. I don't know. It's an interesting tension. And do they want? I also thought it's kind of cool because it's like you can take two villains and be like, now they're going to be villains to the rest of the universe and the multiverse, but they're also the good guys because deep down they're actually maintaining order that is worse. They're the firewall to something worse, even though they're participating in an oppressive, authoritarian, basically a government that runs all the timelines. So sorry, I'm throwing a lot out.
Pascal's wager in a sense, because it's like, well, I'll do this because what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
Or what if he's right? It's making a decision out of caution because you don't know the true reality, the truth behind it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Caution, exactly. So,
So Sylvie tries to convince him that, okay, now we're seeing eye to eye. They have this awkward, stupid kiss, and then she kicks him through a portal, and he appears back in the TVA, and she's now left alone in a room with He Who Remains.
Yeah. And then what?
Well, she basically does what we anticipate that she's going to do, and she charges forward and plunges her blade through him and kills him. At which point actually before that even starts happening, while they're fighting in the room, we can see the timelines branching outside, the castle. And he's yelling, "You better hurry up and make your decision. The timelines are already starting to branch." And he's not afraid of death either, because he says, even if you kill me, the eventuality of cosmic multidimensional war will simply put me right back where I started here through reincarnation.
Yeah.
So she does kill him, and he says something like, "Okay, I'll see you soon."
Yeah, I'll see you
because
again.
Because when he says "I'll see you soon," I assume he means that she will be encountering his variants in a very adversarial way.
I took it to mean that, and the fact that that version of him will also end up back where he's back there too at some point. But I don't know.
But not soon. That's going to take quite a bit longer.
Seems like it would take like many. Yeah.
But to him, who's lived a million lifetimes, how do you define soon in his reality? Who knows?
Right. Electrons or photons, I should say, that travel from the sun to us do not experience time. As far as they can tell, it's instant.
Yes,
and that's true for all photons and all throughout the universe. But they don't have consciousness because they're photons.
Yep. So then we end up from Loki's perspective. He's in the TVA, and he starts running through trying to find. The interesting thing is, as soon as he goes into the TVA, he's a wanted criminal. The TVA would abduct him in a heartbeat, but they're in an absolute state of chaos because the timelines are going completely wacky. There's millions of branches coming off the main timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's running around seemingly no longer concerned with him, or at least that's what they want you to believe. And then he finds Mobius and approaches him and starts cautioning him, saying, "We've got to take action. We found him at the end of the timeline. Everything is in chaos. The variants are coming. We have to prepare for war." And they look at him and say, "Whoa, buddy, who are you? What department are you from?"
Yeah.
And we learn at that point that Loki is not in his own timeline. He is not in the TVA that we know. He is in a branching reality that was caused as a result of the actions that happened at the end of time.
Yes.
So, and the last thing we see is a statue behind them in the TVA of He Who Remains, King the Conqueror, which, kind of calls back to the Saddam Husseins and the Gaddafis, it's a dictator thing. This is not a benevolent version of King. This is one of the many thousands upon millions of King variants that we were warned about.
Right. And so previously we'd seen architectural features and design choices of the timekeepers, like on the back wall of that one lady's office, the big heads, but the heads are sort of they're like helmeted. And actually you picked up, or after we finished watching it, that they actually look a lot like that guy from the comic book, the timekeepers, but like they were sort of non-personalized. They had their sort of generic face mask helmets on. But in this new one, where you just described, Loki finds himself, where Owen Wilson doesn't recognize him, the large statue of him is actually his face and his hair and it's very clearly him. Now it's a whole different thing where it's the actual face and it's the actual individual identity of the person. And that is sort of like any society or culture that builds monuments to its leaders while they're still alive, I find to be distasteful. Not just those big authoritarian ones, but like Rush Limbaugh. Mount Rushmore. I mean, like even that sort of thing is just like, ugh, we're just gonna, because there's a reason those sorts of things are done is because they create mythologies that people fall for and make it harder for a society to face the actual truth and realities of stuff. It's a strange form of like social control and propaganda, which I shouldn't say all governments and societies do it equally, but we see it throughout history and we see it throughout the modern world we're in right now. Because it works, but it's a cool way of doing it. It's a cool way of revealing that he's now I don't quite know what to make of that exactly, but it is different.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that this is now setting up the post-Thanos arc. This is the new villain arc, who's going to go on for who knows how long, where King the Conqueror is the predominant villain.
Right. Okay. So that's something I wanted to talk about, and we could probably wrap up after that. with any extra thoughts you'd like. But so the villain thing here. So Thanos is like the primary baddie for the last like 10, 12 years, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Like not every movie is about him, but somehow he is sort of the driving.
Ultimately, they kind of are. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, Ronan the Accuser coming, he bowed down to Thanos. He was one of the Legion of Thanos. Doctor Strange, I think, well, actually maybe not that one. I don't. Dormammu, I don't think had a connection
whether they
to...
mention him specifically in a movie, they're still taking place within a world where he is the primary threat for the overall arc, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
there is no threat greater than Thanos during those movies.
Exactly, yeah.
And now we're in a place with a character who created an agency who looks at Infinity Stones like they're pebbles.
Yes, so there's a scene in the first episode, right, where they have like the pebbles in the drawer and they're like tossing them around. So
and they say, "Oh, we just use these as paperweights."
You pointed that out near the end of the finale after we finished watching it. What is the significance of this? So it sort of just trivializes the Infinity Stones?
Well, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from what I understand, and I think this was even confirmed in comic books going back a long way, is that the Infinity Stones are not the most powerful, weapon that can be wielded within the whole cosmos, because it only works in the universe from which they originate. You take the Infinity Stones outside of that universe, and they're powerless.
They're just shiny rocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a callback, like an Easter egg in the show, kind of affirming that.
Right. So the Thanos era is over. We're BT now. No.
Yeah, but then again,
AT after Thanos.
When you have a character like Kang who controls and manipulates and travels through time, we could see Thanos again as maybe maybe he'll bring him back into existence and then vaporize him in front of us just to show just how insignificant he was. Yeah,
or use him as a lieutenant, kind of the way Thanos had other baddies working for him. It's kind of like a hierarchy.
And he even said, Kang even told them, Loki said, "You've lost. We found you." And he's like, "No. Well, yes, you found me because I paved the road, and all you did is walk down it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as if to trivialize everything they've been through already, all the Avengers fight against Thanos, the Infinity Stones, the travel through time, all of those trials and tribulations apparently were just minor obstacles that he set in place, knowing full and well what was going to happen and what was supposed to happen, more importantly. The Avengers were supposed to win. They say that in the first episode.
Right.
Because Loki says, "Why are you bringing me in? All I did was pick up the Tesseract. Why don't you go after and take out the Avengers? They're the ones who went back through time and messed everything up and put the stones back." And they said, "Yeah, well, the Avengers were supposed to do that. That was supposed to happen. What you did, that wasn't supposed to happen."
You were an unapproved timeline or something like
that.
Okay. All right. So now we're set up with a whole new villain, a whole new character, or a whole new villain arc. Which this guy, what's the actor's name again? You keep saying
Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors. He's young. It's a guy. He's probably, I don't know how old he is, but he's under 40, I would guess. Whether he's 40, but point being, I could see in older times in this country, they might have given that role to like an old crusty white guy who looks like Emperor Palpatine, but they gave it to a young dude, which means, I'm inferring a lot, but that means that he can have this role for 20 plus years or more. What a great casting choice as well as, but for him, he's going to be the big baddie for the next 10, 15 years of Marvel movies or something like that. They're not going to go kill him in the next movie.
Long as he doesn't go online and start tweeting out that Republicans are being treated like Holocaust, what happened at Disney with what's her face from The Mandalorian.
I don't know. Oh, the
Gina something.
Castello or something.
Yeah.
So the big arm lady.
Yeah, we were thinking that she was going to be a major character, but things can happen. Things change. Hopefully, his health stays good. He doesn't make any missteps, and we see a lot more of him because I like what they're doing with him.
Yeah, it seems like they'll do fine with that.
But we do know that from the setting up of variants and from the fact that he embodied completely different looking people in the comics from the timeline, that if something does happen, they could easily recast him and it wouldn't be questioned.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I see. They could easily just pick a different person and put that's also, that's for sure. or just do digital holograms of these deep fakes. That's also going to be a thing in the future of cinema. It's exciting. I think it's an interesting. That's what I really enjoyed about the final episode, though, was just this huge lore, this big scope, this big world building of it all. Because it's sort of like it's like they found a few extra notches on the Google Maps zoom out slider. It's like, oh, we can actually go wider than we thought. Okay, wow. So there's this other entity that now needs to be dealt with. So Loki is going to be fighting. Who, like, he is looking out for himself, or is he just stuck in a position? Like, where do you think season 2 might take? Because Loki's out trying to help things now, right? Or no? I don't know. And is the lady Loki? What's Sylvie? What's she doing these days?
Well, she is gonna. The last we see of her, she's still in the Citadel at the end of time. So she's essentially taking the reins. And you can only assume that one of the last things we see of Loki is that he is despondent and saddened and just emotionally devastated because he lost Sylvie and he was kicked away.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming he's going to want to try and find her and save her and protect her. And in doing so, of course, he's going to, conflict with King.
So Loki had thought that he had found his love. He was going to date himself. I would actually like to date a female version of me, just maybe not bald or 6'3", but other than that, I think I'm a pretty funny, nice guy, and I think I'd make a really funny, nice gal too. Not too horny.
I forgot to mention that Renslayer does go off on her own.
Don't touch that fish. Don't you fucking go near that fish.
Oh, there's that fish.
Yeah, that's the guy. That's my god. That's my fish that shall remain.
I'm gonna harpoon it and send it into the sky.
Don't even think about it.
You got company in your house.
Better. Where?
On the staircase right here.
All right, I'm coming up.
They were already there. I did not bring them.
Yeah, those are my pets. They like to stick around here. Here, just hang out for a second with them, James. Don't kill them. So, where do you think this series will go? I know I asked you that, but.
I think it's going to be, they're going to travel throughout timelines. They're going to try and reunite Loki with Sylvie. We're going to find out. I don't know, actually. It's kind of an interesting one. It's like, will they go to ancient Egypt? Will they meet the various incarnations of Kang over time? Will they discuss Iron Lad? Will they, talk about the origins? Because one person postulated on YouTube, and I wish I remember who I heard this from. It was one of those big theory channels from much smarter MCU people than I'll ever be. But they were saying that the whole idea of the genesis of Kang being a descendant of Richards from the Fantastic Four is that they're going to change that and make them descendants of Tony Stark, because the Fantastic Four technically don't really exist on the MCU timeline yet. Mm-hmm. So they would have to establish those characters in order to make that actually work.
Okay. Wow. So there's a lot to come. All right. Interesting. Yeah. Good stuff. And where will the alligator Loki play a role in all this? Do you think they'll fall in love with like a crocodile Loki or something? Or?
I want an entirely spin-off series of nothing but the alligator. People say they want the alligator and Kid Loki. Mm-hmm. I could take or leave Kid Loki.
Yeah, fuck Kid Loki.
I want the alligator.
Alligator Loki's where it's at. I appreciated that they didn't, even though it's so absurd to have an alligator Loki the way they did, I like that they would do reaction shots of the alligator, but they weren't like silly animated. They just would show it not having any facial expressions or maybe like blinking its eyes or bouncing its head, because reptiles famously don't have the same facial muscles that primates have, especially mammals in general, I would probably say, but primates especially humans were real face talkers, but reptiles not so much. So I like that I just like that they did alligator Loki. They could have made that much more annoying than it was, and it did well. James, final question, or do you have anything else you'd like to point out, or any moments of the show that you enjoyed, or hopes or dreams, or
one thing
should Lou Ferrigno make a cameo, because he's the true the real
there was
Marvel
many
original.
cases where it was hinted that there was a Mobius Ravonna relationship forming, where they seem to genuinely care about one another. And I wonder if it stays true to the comic books, where Ravonna, or a variant of Ravonna, falls for King, how that's going to impact Mobius and his involvement in the story.
Right.
And even like what the meaning of Mobius is, like a Mobius strip, something without a beginning or an end. It's
Mm-hmm.
like could that mean something deeper than we're aware of?
I think, yeah.
And will we see Mobius variants? I mean, we've already seen one Mobius variant, the one who didn't know Loki.
Well, it turns out Zoolander is going to be part of the wide world. All the Ben Stiller films are going to be considered part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And yeah, I was going to make a dumb joke about Moby calling himself Mobius. Whatever. I'm not going to say it.
Or he'll just join like a Magic Mike, and he'll do his Mobius strip.
Yes, exactly. Show off that ab. Cool. Well, I think we've pretty much nailed it. I really enjoyed I think we've nailed it. Who the fuck says that about their own stupid podcast?
I mean, we should dance with the skeletons around the maypole. I mean,
that's
what it's here for.
Yeah. I have no idea what a maypole is, but I'm happy to have one here. Greeting visitors. Yeah, this is what marriage used to be like in the Flintstones days. I can't remember what I was going to say. Fuck. Oh, I enjoyed the season. You know, it had a lot to offer. I was surprised it was only 6 episodes. When I heard it was I was traveling the last few weeks, so when I heard it was the finale, I was like, "Whoa, it's already over. That sucks." And it's nice to have a show out that comes out once a week. We can kind of anticipate that. I know you like that too, James. So
yeah,
those don't come around often enough.
Now Wednesdays, I just got to go back to staring at a wall.
Yeah, staring at a goddamn wall. Not even one of those fun time travel walls. Oh, James, we got another guy.
There's.
All right, so I guess that's all I got. Everybody, James, if you have anything else you want to add or throw in, or any Marvel movies, is Hawkeye going to be instrumental? I think that what kind of arrow takes out the guy who creates the entire universe and controls all time and space? Which arrow can you make that would be that? Fucking Hawkeye.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one.
Yeah. Just gonna have a suction cup on the arrow, just like one of those that like sticks to his forehead, and then the guy just. All right. Well, anything you want to add, James?
No, I think that's pretty much everything that I can recall from the series that had significance. Yeah. I mean, I kind of just appreciate that we have seen a character, because like in Marvel movies, you don't typically get this, where like Tony Stark. Yeah, I mean, I guess he kind of had it. He started off as this egotistical billionaire playboy guy, and by the end, he was a little bit more grounded. He was still an egomaniac, but he had a family, he had a child. He cared about more than just himself. He had like a father-son relationship with Spider-Man, and he really did kind of over time grow as a character.
Help me beat up this guy here, James. Yeah, Tony. Yeah, that's very true.
And, you know, we see the same thing happen with Loki. Not the same thing, but we do see the character grow, and we see him become more than we thought he was capable of being in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted that I'd be a fan of Loki. I always found that character kind of obnoxious. Not, just kind of like, all right, we get it. He's got the horns. The devil wears horns. He's the goat. He's the goat of the world. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, he was just there to contrast Thor's mighty, hunky Australian blondness. And that was basically it. And but it's cool that they've set this whole world up. I mean, and I have no idea how it's all going to fold back into the, Black Orchid and is that her name? Black Orchid? Scarlet?
No, Black Widow.
Black Widow? Who's Black Orchid?
I don't know.
Wasn't there? Oh, who's the lady who does all the orchids in Batman? Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I really have all this stuff sorted out. Marvel, though, just final comment, shout out to their ability to weave this whole world together and to set up decades-long intellectual property structures that are going to, speaking of controlling timelines, the real masters of this world are the Marvel executives making these decisions. And they've done a good job compared to, you can just tell the DC, cinematic universe is just like, gotta be frustrated being, it's like, they're not even Pepsi to Coke. They're like Tab to Coke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that a perfect metaphor, James?
It kind of is. It's like the quality of Marvel
They're not even
versus DC lately has been a little, lackluster. Like the Snyder Cut was fantastic. I enjoyed that thoroughly. But it's like it's really hard to hold a candle to these modern Marvel,
right.
movies.
Why do you think they're getting it? Why is Marvel getting it right like this?
Money.
It's just money.
And talented storytellers and endearing characters that people care about that have a history. What's the word I'm looking for? Have established backgrounds
Yeah.
that people resonate with.
Storied history might be the phrase.
That's it. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a combination of all that. Not that I actually really know, but it seems to me like the Marvel world has a better diversity, and I mean that in like a very literal kind of like they just, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe DC has a bunch of characters I don't know about, but they've been able to turn fucking Winter Soldier and who's the Sky Falcon? What's this guy?
Falcon.
Falcon. That's a fucking show. Those two numbnuts characters that are completely disposable as far as I could tell. Let's go sit by this tree and say goodbye to everybody, James. Join me over at my sitting oak.
Now, if you could travel back through time and date Black Widow, would you do so knowing that she eventually becomes Black Widow?
Hell yeah. You kidding me? She's way hot.
you're
She's
gonna-
way out of my league. I've always wanted such a challenge. I'm funny enough to date slightly out of my league, but not
Right,
but
but
not
that
quite that
means-
much.
That means you're going to die, though.
Why would that make me die? I'm hilarious.
Because if she's a widow, then
Oh, the widow part. I just assumed she was a widow because some other schmuck already got killed. Or does she kill everybody? All of her husbands?
good question. I'd have to watch the movie to find out, I guess, her origin story.
Well, depending on how life's going, honestly, I could probably sign up for that too. I don't see the point in me going all the way to old age if it's going to be miserable, you know? So just fucking off me. That's true love. All right. That's a great question, though. All right. Well, this has been fun. James, we've had a nice time. I hope the audience has enjoyed our podcast here. I meant to do better with the camera there. I know James would talk and I'd just be so caught up listening to his amazing insights and ability to string sentences together and just forget to turn the camera. But we're also new to doing these kind of podcasty things here in this Valheim world. So I'll get better at that. And if people want to hear, I know we got a couple comments from folks saying, why are you doing so much video game shit? You should do more commentary and discussions about shows and stuff. So that's one reason why we're doing this today. And because I agreed with that comment. I was like, yeah, I should. But I also think it's kind of fun to incorporate our show discussions into this weird little Valheim world.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. Thanks, James. James, your heart's fine. I know that.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing great.
Okay.
Very happy.
So, yeah, the one where you actually talk about it has not even been published yet, and this will be shortly after that. So, but the time between those two are about 3 or 4 weeks. But yeah, James's heart's still kicking along just fine after having it all sliced and diced.
Yep.
And
working on making it stronger.
I got a new
This
job.
takes effort.
More
Oh,
strong.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and I got a new job taking up a lot of my weeks. So, but we'll see. We'll see how we're gonna still do Valheim stuff and maybe more of these. And we hope everybody enjoyed our listen to this. Keep wearing your masks, everybody. This shit's not going away soon, even if you're vaccinated or get vaccinated, you dumbass. James, take care,
Yep.
my friend.
Will do.
All right, goodbye. We're signing off. Don't hang up yet, James. I'm just saying bye to the video. Bye, everybody. James,
Later.
bye.